Is it true that Fauci and company just made up out of thin air the restriction of everybody's got to wear a mask and everybody's got to stay 6 feet apart? You remember those days, how horrible they were for human freedom. Was there a scientific basis to those regulations that were imposed upon us by executive diktat?
The short answer is no. As you know, government studies everything. So they've had pandemic studies going on for a decade or more. We probably spend billions of dollars. They do simulations, and they, in all of their efforts to figure out what they would do before a pandemic occurred in 2020, they all discounted masks because the studies uniformly showed that masks didn't work. We've tried masks in studies for influenza, which is also a virus, and it's of a similar size, although I think COVID's smaller than influenza. But with influenza, they found that when you wear cloth masks versus no masks, that you actually had more infections with cloth masks than no masks.
Do you think the Republicans in the House of Representatives and the Democrats as well, who voted against Andy Biggs's amendment and Chip Roy's amendment to require a search warrant, even understand what you're saying? Do they care, or are they terrified and intimidated by the deep state, by the spies who share secrets with them?
It's usually scaremongering that gets them in the end. See, Johnson's inclinations at first were to be more on our side. Yes. He had historically actually had doubts about FISA. He had historically thought a warrant was a reasonable thing until they take him into a secret room and they say the end of the world is coming. And here's the secret data that we only give to the overlords. And you're a special overlord now. We're going to show you the keys to the kingdom, what would happen if we don't do anything. And it's scaremongering. And they're very effective at it because, see, they control all of the data.
What is your understanding of what the deep state is in American government?
The deep state is the bureaucracy that doesn't change over with elections, and it grows in power over time. Anthony Fauci was part of the deep state. So was J. Edgar Hoover. They would be extremes of the deep state because they last for generations. Basically, Fauci was there for 2 generations. So was J. Edgar Hoover. I actually wrote an op-ed comparing the two and comparing their abuses of power to their longevity. And just for grins, I tried to submit it to the Washington Post to see what would happen.
No luck.
No luck. But we did get it published. I can't remember where we published it. But, you know, the deep state are people that are immune to the electoral or democratic process. And so it's funny that the left goes crazy when you call things deep state, and they all talk about democracy and representative government. But the deep state thwarts representative government in the sense that, for example, with the COVID research and with funding gain-of-function research, they've hidden all of it from me and continue to hide it from me. I can't find out where we're doing it, how much money goes to it. I can't get the discussion of what's dangerous and what's not. So when Anthony Fauci says, oh, nothing to see here, this is not gain-of-function, well, I'd like to see the deliberations.
You truly are the greatest understander of the Constitution in the Senate today. And I'm comparing you to people who've studied law, practiced law, written about the law their entire careers. You truly have your finger on it, Senator Paul. I only have a few minutes left. Here you are predicting that the House, I hope you're right, it hasn't happened yet, will not take up the bill to waste $61 billion in Ukraine, or two, Chris.
So I, for one, think that the American people are opposed to this bill. I think they're opposed to the concept of Ukraine first and America last. And I predict that this issue doesn't go away. I predict that the House of Representatives is not going to take up this bill. I predict that the vast majority of the Republicans in the House of Representatives are more conservative than the Republicans in this body. And I predict that this fight is not over.
What do you think will happen now?
My prediction could be wrong. I hope I'm still right, but I do think that the Republicans in the House are more conservative than the Republicans in the Senate, and there's still a chance that it could be delayed. But we now have Speaker Johnson disappointing me to my very core. I mean, he started out at least saying that foreign aid should be paid for, and that would be a big step forward. And he's backing away from that. Now he's talking about passing all of the foreign aid unpaid for. And it really doesn't seem to be much difference between his position and Joe Biden's, or his positions and Mitch McConnell's. And so if he's craving the polling numbers of Mitch McConnell, he'll get them. Mitch McConnell's popular with about 6% of Americans, unpopular with about 60% of Americans. And that's where Johnson is headed at this point. The question is, will he be able to ram this through? Probably. But people at home need to realize what Mike Johnson has now done as Speaker. He passed a spending bill with the majority Democrats. Majority Republicans voted against his spending bill. That spending bill will lead to a deficit this year of at least $1.5 trillion. Then Mike Johnson came forward and voted with the majority of Democrats against a warrant requirement to search Americans. And now he's going to come forward once again with a majority of Democrats and vote for foreign aid to everybody. You know, 60 billion more to Ukraine. I saw one report that's going to be over 20 billion now to Israel, and then unpaid for, and then more for Taiwan.